No unit highlight today, guys. Just wanted to revel in the glory of this full stack of Empire. Today, I'm facing off against Wei. I've got Balthazar Gelt here, an Empire captain, leading the way. 4 Pistoliers. You can see the rockets already landing there. Well, let's have a look at them. We've got just a regular Hellstorm rocket battery. Does have some chevrons to give it better fire rate. A Witch Hunter to support this line of crossbowmen. A bunch of spearmen with shields, couple halberdiers, a single Reichsguard, and that's it. Yeah, a full 20 stack of Empire. I've been playing these Empire 20 stack builds recently. Been enjoying them quite a bit. Up against the foul horde of Chaos, Kolek Suneater, and another Dragon Ogre Shaggoth, of course. Also have the Summoners of Rage. Mirror Guard currently getting rocketed away there. We've got some Chaos Warriors and Marauders, along with some Marauder Horsemen with throwing axes. A Deathcaster here. Some Poison Hounds, so very typical kind of, I guess not typical, I don't know that Balthazar Gelt and Empire Captain's necessarily typical, but very thematic and loreful matchup here in Schwartz. No, this is the Eschen map, that's right, Eschen. So yeah, the rockets firing in point blank. The idea here is we're going to synergize with Balthazar's Plague of Rust to get effective armor-piercing damage from these crossbows and pistoliers. I really only have the AP of the halberdiers, which is some AP, but not a lot. However, with these multiple armor-sundering effects, I expect I can still get the damage done I need against the big targets, which there are 2 of, obviously. Double Shaggoth here as these hounds emerge from the woods. See the crossbowmen up on the hill, opening fire. Someone asked me, you know, they must not have seen my crossbowman video, which, funny enough, is one of the units that actually kicked off my whole unit highlight series was Empire Crossbowmen. A very, very strong unit that I really don't see enough. Super cheap and cost effective for the AP damage they can do. They're going to start lighting up the Summoners of Rage there. And keep in mind, Summoners of Rage even have some missile resistance. Granted, some of those crossbowmen just got horribly friendly fired by those rockets there. But, you know, poor Wei here is forced into a tough position. When you're using Fate of Buna on Pistoliers that you're in for a pretty bad time, but I kind of get what he's doing with that. Like, he doesn't really have a lot of answers for my Pistoliers, believe it or not. But yeah, so that Searing Doom there drops in. Unfortunately, my Spearmen do get terrified, and immediately Kolek and this other Shaggoth collapse in the back line. We do manage to mostly save the Summoners from getting in with some spears, pulling in those reserve halberds back. Meanwhile, these Pistoliers just blasting away at those Marauders. But you can see Kolek here, Plague of Rust down to only 35 armor. If we can get that Accusation active as well, that should stack to minus 90 armor. And just because there's so many missile units here, like I said, full stack of Empire, it's a lot. Getting some nice point-blank fire as we attempt to hit the Hounds in the background. A few of those shots are actually going to hit the Shaggoths, which is fine. Reichsguard had come in, crushed some Marauders out on the flank there, and now get a nice rear charge on those Chaos Warriors, trying to support the Spearmen there. Spearmen definitely dying horribly. Got a few Mirror Guard left in here as well, but oh wow, that must be a little bit of a bug. They have the Zotes casting animation. That doesn't look right at all. Anyway. They do cast that Chain Lightning. Unfortunately for Wei, it doesn't get that great of RNG. It does pretty much take out 1 crossbow unit. I say pretty much take out. They actually managed to recover their leadership and keep fighting. This very confused mess here you can see is mostly just Kolek and the Shaggoth pushing through, trying to get my ranged units, right? But Captain's out in the distance, just kind of chasing around whatever. The rockets are finally going to get shut down, but not before earning another chevron. Definitely paying for themselves. And here's what we really want. Up close, Pistoliers and Crossbowmen just point-blank blasting away at Kolek here. And just in kind of more of an overall discussion, right, about kind of, I guess, army builds and the meta and things. It's interesting, you know, this 20-stack builds in a lot of matchups, I feel, and a lot of, if you have the micro to pull them off, it's going to be a lot to deal with, right? Like, mid-tier units, in my opinion, are now stronger than ever, especially, like, mid-tier defensive units like Spears and Halberds. You know, those kind of very cost-effective mid-tier missile units as well that have, like, decent AP, maybe aren't necessarily primary AP. There's a few factions, really, that can do this more than anyone, but in general, most factions can skew into a very wide playstyle, and it seems to be beneficial for quite a few. I don't know, I've seen some games recently with some elites, like some very small elite-focused builds, and that can work definitely as well, but in my opinion, like the numbers game, and this is just kind of my own perception of Total War Warhammer, I guess, but the sort of a full stack of mid-tier units where everything can work together, and I guess this is sort of my bias as an Empire player too, is that I kind of see the game this way, is that, you know, units are supposed to fight with support, right? And if you can take a full 20 stack, you have as much support as possible, and even potentially summoning some on top of that with certain factions to just give you even more numbers. Because if you're getting attacks in the side and rear, like, generally you're going to win. Ooh, man, that nasty Searing Doom there, just wrecking those, Searing Doom, very underrated spell, to be honest. But, yeah, you can see the missile pressure is too much, the kind of overlapping missile pressure, almost sort of like Dowie, but, you know, with actual mobility and spells. But the crossbowmen, despite the fact they got basically no damage in, no kills, rather, they got their damage value, no question, shooting the Shaggoths. A lot of them doubling up on their damage value. Yeah, Halberdiers also very cost-effective at 550 points. Again, that kind of mid-tier defensive unit, now that, like, they seem to be working better because of the mass and bracing changes. I guess that's really the biggest thing, is the mass and bracing changes, and have really made those mid-tier kind of full-stack units, because you want to be able to tie things down more than anything and protect, right? Your damage-dealing units, and your infantry now more than before can actually be those damage dealer units, right? And I've been trying just in different you know, builds in different battles, like, for example, like great weapon infantry up against armored cavalry or monsters seems to be a little bit better, and that's an interaction you wouldn't necessarily think about because they don't really have charge defense, right? But it is true that all infantry units got better mass, so like those great weapons work better. The crossbows, you know, they weren't necessarily direct beneficiaries of that, but the fact that the infantry units protecting them are a lot more sturdy and can hold up to mass much better means you can take more and protect them better, especially in a build like this where, like, realistically I've got 5 missile units I have to protect. Like, these ones can kind of just run away and do their own thing if they have to. And then I've got, you know, plenty of units to try and protect them, right? Like these 5 here plus the 6th. So it ends up I have one more unit, you know, than I have one more melee unit than missile unit, kind of discounting all my heroes to protect, and it ends up working out okay for Wei here. Just taking a look at his build, the Shaggoths definitely had a tough time against that missile pressure, which is something that can happen against the Empire. The Deathcaster got his value, even though he was Fate of Buning Pistoliers, which is rough. He still got some pretty good damage value there. Chaos Marauders, yeah, they did an okay job, not amazing. Champs are actually an interesting one. I need to play with them a little bit more, but it seems like in a lot of replays I've watched, they basically, like, don't die in melee against low-tier troops, so maybe there's something there. These Chaos Warriors, they paid for themselves. Mirror Guard got wrecked by the rockets there, as did kind of the Marauder Horsemen and the Hounds. Yeah, Summoners of Rage did pay for themselves, though. Maybe not quite, I guess. Yeah, not even close. But yeah, the Pistoliers, like I said, they did an okay job, especially these 3 right here. The 2 that got Fate of Bunid, you can see, it does make a pretty significant difference. But the 2 that did not were able to get a lot of damage value. Reiksguard kind of acting in that sweeper role very good. If you want to look at the rockets, there's 1,800 damage value, so basically like, you know, Sunmaker damage value, but without actually having to pay to bring the Sunmaker, which is ridiculously expensive. Yeah, like I said, Halberds did good. Spearmen with shields kind of did their thing of acting as roadblocks, but better roadblocks than ever, like I said. And, yeah, the Empire Captain also kind of doing his thing. So, just to kind of finish up, I don't really know where I was taking this discussion to begin with, but in talking about full stacks, and you've seen me play Vampire Counts recently, Tomb Kings, basically all factions. Like, I'm of the opinion, and again, feel free to disagree, especially those of you players out there who have tournament experience. Feel free to chime in with your own thoughts, but in my opinion, most factions you should be taking at least, like, 15 units minimum. And with most factions, you have the ability to go with a full stack of troops, and it will benefit you, even with something like Elves, which probably the 3 Elves, Dark Elves maybe least of all, but High Elves and Wood Elves can have a hard time fielding a full 20 stack. You know, I would say still, like, maybe the Elves, you bump that minimum down to like 12 or 13 units minimum. With most other factions, though, it benefits you to go as wide as possible, whether that be Coast, Skaven, Counts. I mean, those are all kind of Horde centric factions, right, where you're incentivized to bring a lot of models because you have cheap high model count units, right? But even I would say Bretonia falls into that somewhat, Beastmen kind of, same thing, Greenskins kind of, but even like dwarves, you know, or lizardmen, the strongest builds that I've been seeing recently are pretty much 20 stacks, right? So it's definitely something. It can seem a little bit intimidating to micro at first, but especially if you're using control groups, you can simplify things and make it easier for yourself. And I would say if you're first starting out, you maybe just want to cut that back a little bit, but especially if you're kind of a middle tier player looking to step your game up, learning how to micro those full 20 stacks, and it's even something that I sometimes struggle with, right? Can be tricky. It's something you do want to learn, right? And I guess kind of as an end of this discussion, pay attention to your mid-tier units. You know, sort of the units that... or I guess pay attention to either your mid-tier units, right? Because you can either kind of take a full stack of mid-tier units, or some low and maybe one or two like high-tier power units. For example, like in a faction with Skaven, you might have a lot of chaff, and then a handful of quote-unquote like power units, right? Where your actual damage dealing is stored, rather than like a full stack of mid-tier units. It's kind of an interesting food for thought. That's maybe a discussion for another time, but... hopefully you guys enjoyed watching this one. Definitely a fun one. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification every time I upload a new video. You'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.